I'm really looking forward to share with you my experiences after 7 years as the head of the Emancipation Affairs Unit for the Flemish government. I hope I can inspire you with some lessons learned, and I'm looking forward to hear from your experiences. I made a presentation. On this slide, this is a perfect image of diversity. I hope you can see it well. A cat, a lot of dogs. Can you imagine how this cat is feeling? Imagine you were that cat. How would you be feeling? I'm sure you already experienced a situation where you were that cat. Perhaps you were the only woman in the management board. Perhaps you were the only father bringing the children to school. Perhaps you were the only person without a university degree between a group of graduates. What were you feeling? Perhaps you felt a little bit afraid, a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit different. I think back to an incident when I was younger. After a football match, I joined my brother and his friends, and at the very moment I joined the group, the discussion stopped. I felt like that cat. I felt uncomfortable. And those guys, they felt uncomfortable too. I'm not sure, but I think it was about boys' talk. So what I want to say is everybody has already experienced a situation where you are the other one. Being diverse, it's something we know all. Well, why change all this? Being diverse, it enriches our society, so why change it? Well, anyway, it's very smart to change the disadvantages of being different into advantages. And there are two main reasons to do so. First, it makes you and your organization more democratic. And the second reason, it makes your organization more effective and efficient. And I'll come back to this later on. This is the content of my presentation. The next, let's say, 50 minutes. I would like to focus on 3 areas. The first area, the Flemish government. What do we do? Which actions do we undertake to promote diversity in our workforce? In the second part, I would like to share with you my experiences after 7 years as the head of the Emancipation Affairs Unit. I would like to share it from my personal point of view. And in the third part, during the Q&A, questions and answers, I'm really looking forward for your experiences. Well, this is Belgium. Mr. Koen Haverbeke already told you that Belgium is a very interesting country. Definitely it is. I don't know, have you been already to Belgium? The sir in the back? But you live in France, don't you? And you lived in Brussels. Okay, yeah. So I invite you to come to Belgium. Perhaps next time you're thinking about a holiday. It's very interesting to come to Belgium. It's only a 2.5 hours flight. So definitely a good idea. But as I said, Belgium is a very interesting country, a challenge, indeed. We know how to cope with diversity. We have 3 official languages in this small country. In the northern part, you see Flanders. There, the citizens speak Dutch. For me, example, my mother tongue is Dutch. I don't know if you know how it sounds. Nu zal ik iets zeggen in het Nederlands en ik ben heel zeker dat je er niks van verstaat, behalve meneer Koen Haverbeke en mijn vrouw Anna van Puimbroek. Well, I was telling how great you all are. Well, it was something different, no? So we have 3 official languages. Another example, how many governments do you think we have in this small country? Just guess. 4, even more. 6. We have 6 governments. So our ministers in charge, they have a big challenge. They have to cope with a lot of diversity. We manage. Sometimes it's difficult, but we manage. And we are also proud that our prime minister is the first person, the first prime minister worldwide who's being openly gay. And he also has Italian roots. So Belgium is a very interesting country. In the northern part, you see Flanders. People speak Dutch. Flanders has its own government and its own administration. And today I'm going to share with you the case of diversity in the workforce of the Flemish government. In the middle of the map, you see a small dot. It's Brussels. It's the capital. I'm based in Brussels. This is the building where I'm working. So next time you come to Belgium, give me a call and we can have lunch together. I'm really looking forward to that. Some facts and figures about our organization. Our number of staff, 44,000. We have some 70 entities, departments. We are spread throughout Flanders. Some examples of departments: education, culture, innovation, agriculture, work, sport, media, public governments. The federal government, the government of Belgium, the federal government has other competencies like defense, justice, and so on. I hope you can see the picture. It's a portrait of the Flemish ministers. And you can see my boss. He's the fourth person from the left, the person with the blue tie. I hope you can see him. It's Minister Geert Bourgeois, and he's responsible for the civil service. So he's my boss. I report directly to him. Well, this is a very simple image, but a very good image, because that's my goal. That's the mission statement of the Flemish government. We want to mirror society. We want to include diversity you see in society within our workforce. For example, the number of women in our society, I suppose it's the same in your country, is 50%. That means we would like to have 50% of our staff being women. At the moment, we have 48% women. So we almost reached our goal. But when you look at our management positions, the number drops significantly. At this moment, we have 24% women in top management positions. So we have a way to go. The Flemish government chose to focus on specific target groups. So we made a choice. Now we are focusing on women in top and middle management positions, people of foreign origin, people with a disability or chronic illness, and the theme of sexual orientation. I don't know if it fits with the priorities of your own organization, but we made this choice. But of course, you know, I told you about being diverse in the beginning. You felt diverse. You can be diverse in many ways. For example, you can be diverse by using another language, a different nationality, your professional experience, social class, values, sexual orientation, specialization, skills, also gender, race. Anyway, it's important to make a major distinction between visible and invisible differences. And as you can see, only some differences are above level of the waterline. There are many differences you can't see. I'm sure you already experienced a situation that only after time you noticed that somebody you know has a certain illness or a different social background. And once you knew that, it made it possible to understand the person much better. You understand why he or she is thinking or feeling the way he or she does. Looking at society, looking at people from a perspective of diversity helps you to understand human interaction much better. So it's very interesting. In the next slides, I'm going to give you an image of the sort of initiatives we undertake. Meet my colleagues. My colleague, Hugh, originally from Ghana. He has a technical position. And my other colleague, André, he's an ICT officer. As you can see, probably, I hope you can see, he talks with his hands. He's deaf. He uses sign language. These two colleagues and many others take the lead in our poster campaign. The goal of this campaign, there are two goals. The first goal, we want to show that being diverse is positively valued within by our organization. And the second goal, we want to show that we already have a lot of diverse staff and that it's something normal. Anyway, it should be. On this slide, you can see me, the first picture. You can see me holding a meeting with our Emancipation Affairs officers. I told you we have some 70 departments. In each department, we have an Emancipation Affairs officer. We come together, we discuss plans, we exchange our experiences related to diversity in the workforce. Here you can see a picture of a debate we organized on the International Women's Day. Each year, the 8th of March, there is the International Women's Day. Each year, we organize a debate related to the issue of diversity in management positions. We empower women, we bring them together, we give them energy to move on. And here you can see an image of a training session. I told you 70 departments. We have a lot of human resources professionals. And we come together during a training. And during this training, we discussed a specific topic. Namely, the case, imagine a member of staff comes to you. Imagine you are such a human resources professional. A colleague, a member of staff comes to you with a problem related to his or her sexual orientation. How do you cope with this situation? I'll give you an example of a true story we discussed during this session. And we exchanged our thoughts and our experiences, and we advised each other how should we deal with this situation. What was the situation? Situation, a true story, of a young guy working in a male team. Within this team, there was a quite macho atmosphere. But he's afraid to tell he's a gay person. And he chooses to tell about his imaginary girlfriend. But in fact, he suffers. He suffers of lying all the time about his so-called girlfriend, and he doesn't feel the energy, he doesn't have the courage to tell he's a gay person. Well, he's thinking to leave the organization. And that's a pity, because he's a really good, valuable member of staff. But this person comes to you. You're a human resources professional. How do you cope with this situation? How are you going to tackle this problem? How are you going to change the culture in this team? We came together, we exchanged experiences, and we found a solution. And if you are interested, you can ask me in the third part during the Q&A how we solved the situation. Well, what do we do? It's not enough to organize events. It's not enough to launch poster campaigns. You must be active in several areas. And I'll give you the examples of the areas we've chosen for the Flemish government. And I'm sure there are other areas, but just this as an example, which perhaps can be inspiring. First, regulation. Kari already told something about the discussion about quota. We chose to install this rule. I'll give you an example of one of those rules. In case there are two candidates after a selection procedure which are equally qualified, and you have a woman and a man, then you have to choose the woman. Because they are, at this moment, they are underrepresented. And we chose to formulate a target of 33%, and we want to reach this target by the end of 2015. So it's a regulation, a rule in our organization. So this is an example of a new regulation, but perhaps it's necessary to change an existing regulation. As I told you already, we are working with targets. I think it's something in between nothing and quota. And perhaps it can be something interesting for your organization or your government as well. We are not working with quota. But for each target group we are focusing on, we have specific targets. For example, women in top management positions, our target is 33% by the end of 2015, so we have some years to go. You have to change your infrastructure. I already gave you the idea of the emancipation of officers. It's good to work with annual diversity plans. And I think it's also very important, from my experience, from my point of view, to implement the diversity plans and targets in the targets of your management. You have to integrate it in the annual evaluation system. That works quite well. For example, each manager, each top manager, the boss of each department, has to figure out what will be the goal for his or her department by the end of 2015. It must relate to the general target. At the end of the year, his or her boss, the minister in charge, will ask, okay, what's your result? What did you do to promote the number of women in top management positions, the number of staff of foreign descent, and so on? Okay, another thing we do is offering financial support. Now we are talking about the group of people with a disability or people with a chronic illness. I must stress that not all people with a disability or chronic illness have a lower level of performance. Of course, not all of them, but some do. And we chose as a Flemish government that it's important to give these people also a place in society. Of course, we are not a social welfare department. At the end of the day, the job needs to be done. But to a certain amount, we choose to give these people also a job. So in case you hire a person with a disability or chronic illness, and in case that person has a reduced level of performance, you can receive a certain amount of subsidy. So my unit gives a certain amount of subsidies related to the level of performance of the person we are talking. So that helps the manager to give the support to the person so he or she is able in a good way to do his or her job. We also offer subsidies for adjustments in the workplace. For example, other software when you are not able to see very well. Another area which is interesting to be active in is the area of human resources processes. We invest a lot in changing human resources processes like teleworking. I don't know how it goes in your organization, at university or in a company or in a government. I don't know about your organization, but in the Flemish government, everybody has the opportunity to work at home at least one day a week, and to a maximum of 3 days a week. It helps you to have a good balance between your work and life. And I can affirm that. I work each week I work 1 day at home, and I work hard. We are taking the lead, I must say. We're taking the lead in Flanders. We are taking the lead in changing human resources processes to help our members of staff to have a good combination of work-life balance. It also stimulates the recruitment of women, because it's still the case that mostly women take the job of taking care for the children, etc. There are some evolutions, luckily, but it's still the case. We also offer training. I gave you an example of the human resources professionals, and we also offer leadership programs. And of course, communicate a lot. In a certain way, this conference is also a way of communication, sharing experiences, and collecting energy. Okay. Oh, very interesting, perhaps, you're thinking, but at the end, what's the result? What are the deliveries? In the next slide, I'm going to give you an image, an impression of the way we are going, and what is the distance we have to go. Well, this slide, on this slide, you see graph. a graph of women in top management positions. How to read this graph? The red bars, they show the percentages of women in top management positions over the last years. So what you can see is at the end of 2011, we had 24% women in top management positions, the bosses of those 70 departments. 24%. But the red line, here you can see it, the horizontal line, that's our goal, 33% by the end of 2015. So when you look at the past and you look at the future, then you can make a connection between the date of 2015 and go up and look at the red horizontal line and look from the past to the future. You can see we are going in the good direction. We're heading in the good direction. But we need to be cautious. I told you we're working with targets. The Netherlands are doing the same. Well, they did. They stopped working with targets. And since then, the number of women in top management positions dropped. So we need to be cautious. My message is, it asks a lot of energy, a lot of hard work and focus to improve the number of women in management positions and to maintain that result. I also would like to stress that compared to the companies in Flanders, we are doing much better. I'm quite happy with that situation. Well, I'm glad we have a lot of women in top management positions. The number in companies, number of women in top management positions is something about 10%. So 10%, 24%. I think we are showing a good example. But let's look at the figures of persons of foreign descent. Here goes the same. The percentages of my colleagues of foreign descent in our organization over the last few years. At this moment, we have some 20.8 members of staff of foreign descent in our organization. Our target is 4%. It's this red horizontal line. And we also want to reach this target by the end of 2015. So if we look at the past and are looking towards the future, we are heading in the good direction. But unfortunately, again, we need to be very cautious. I don't know if the same goes in your country, but in Belgium and also in Flanders, we are facing huge budget cuts. And also, it also affects our personnel budgets. And as a consequence, we have fewer vacancies. As a consequence, it's more difficult to attract new colleagues, also new colleagues of foreign descent. Perhaps you can see already the effect that we are not really going fast now at this moment. So I'm a little bit cautious about the next years. If you don't have vacancies, how can you recruit new colleagues of foreign descent? So this is, on this slide, you can see the situation of my colleagues with a disability or chronic illness. At this moment, we have 1.2 colleagues with an illness or a chronic disease. Our target is 3%, and we want to reach this target by the end of 2015. I must say, improving the position of these colleagues is the most challenging. I don't know if it's the same in your organization, but it's quite tough to get results. And especially in times of budget cuts, of austerity measures, it's a challenging task. But we are still trying to improve the situation. I think you can imagine, if you were a manager, perhaps you are, if you are a top manager and you are facing budget cuts, you are less likely to hire persons with a disability or chronic illness, because most of you probably will think, you know, lower level of performance. But not all persons, of course, not all persons with a disability or chronic illness have a lower level of performance. In discussions with other colleagues, with managers, I always use the example of my own team. I already heard an example of the lady here in the front of students. I can also tell the story of my 3 colleagues. I have a team of 9. I have 3 colleagues with a chronic illness or a disease. Okay, one person has a seriously reduced level of performance, but I can cope with that. In a team of 9, I can cope with that. My 2 other colleagues perform very well. And I think it depends on the capacity of your team. How many people do you have? And what is the willingness of your colleagues, your members, to give space to this person and to give support? But I don't think it's something that's opposite budget cuts and giving, offering a good place for your diverse colleagues. But anyway, it's not easy. Okay, that was part 1 of my presentation. I told you about the Flemish government. I told you something about the large concept of diversity, being diverse, you know, the story of the cat. I told you something about the kind of actions we undertake and what the results are.